everybody, and welcome back to Dollar Tree Dinners, and welcome to the third and final episode of Eating for $21 a week. This video is going to cover days 6 and day 7, but I do recommend sticking around to the end if possible. At the end of this video, we are going to talk about what ingredients I have left. I'm going to review my choices for this week, and then third, at the very end of this video, I'm going to recap the entire 7 days. Everything that I ate and everything that I cooked. It's gonna be really quick. I'm just gonna hit it like a bullet list. In case you missed anything along the way, that should just kind of give you a guide to the full 7 days. So without further ado, let's hop into day 6. 2 days prior, when I made dinner, I made pierogies. And when I made them, I made extra mashed potatoes that I was saving for a special purpose, and this was that purpose. But I did kind of mess up and accidentally deleted the clip of me actually prepping what I was gonna make. So I'm using the footage from day 1 when I made the gnocchi to kind of demonstrate what I did, because the process was quite similar. I took my leftover mashed potatoes and I mixed in 1 egg and a half cup of flour, but I also mixed in like an extra 1/4 cup or so of the potato flakes because I needed to thicken it up just a little bit. We are making potato pancakes. I was devastated when I realized I accidentally deleted the footage, but hopefully you can kind of see what kind of a consistency I have here as I'm dropping out my dough. I was able to make 8 total potato pancakes, but I do wish I had only made what I needed, which was 4, and made the other 4 fresh the next day. You'll see why. But as soon as I got all of this dough dropped into my skillet, I used a measuring cup or some kind of a flat surface to smash it out into the pancakes. I could only fit 7 in my skillet, so I fried the 8th one off camera, but I did in fact make 8, even though you only saw 7 in the skillet. I think that these potato pancakes turned out fabulous. They are perfectly golden brown. I think that the consistency is really good. I've kind of toyed around with making potato pancakes a couple of times, and I think this might be the best version that I've made. And I have enough ingredients. I could have put meat in it, like hot dogs or bologna. I'm still in the mindset of rationing the ingredients even though it's day 6, and I have a lot left. At the end of each of these, I always talk about what I would have done differently, and there are some things that I probably could have done differently, but overall I'm really happy with my choices this week. I feel like these would be really good with some country gravy or some sausage gravy on top, and I almost made country gravy to pour over them, so. Then for lunch, I made a batch of rice flavored with chicken bouillon the same way that I did on the day I made fried rice. And I had this with my leftover seasoned bean and hot dog mixture, and I just reheated that in the microwave. I was not gonna film myself eating this lunch because I'm at my computer and I'm in hermit mode today, trying to edit the past few days so I can get that video hopefully out on time. I changed my mind the second I took a bite of this, because I don't know if it was how I made the beans and the hot dog mixture that I had for breakfast yesterday, or the fact that I seasoned the rice with a chicken bouillon powder. This is the most flavorful beans and rice I think I've ever had. I'm trying to think of how to say this, but it's like the least beany and ricey that beans and rice could possibly be. It's delicious. For dinner, I made some chimichangas. This one started out by making a batch of flour tortillas the same way that I did in the first video, which is where I took 1 cup of flour, I mixed it with 2 tablespoons of melted margarine, and about a 1/3 cup of water with a pinch of salt, adding the water as you need to until your dough kind of comes together. Knead it by hand for 3 to 5 minutes, and then let it rest for 30 minutes. While my dough rested, I made another batch of refried beans. This is again the same process as last time. I added the beans along with the cooking liquid into a skillet. I seasoned it with some pepper, Cajun seasoning, and a little bit of chicken bouillon powder, and I just kind of mashed it together until I had a nice paste while it heated up. If there's one thing that I am grateful about for trying this week, it is learning how to make my own flour tortillas. Will I still be buying flour tortillas? Yes, because it's a lot of work, but it's more of like in a pinch. If I don't have any flour tortillas and I want to make something, I know that I can. I was thinking that I wanted something fried for dinner tonight, and I'm so glad that I made these. These are perfect. I seasoned them really well. I seasoned them probably more than I should have. It was loud. I don't know if you could hear that. That is so loud. I don't know if you could hear any of that, but we live maybe 20-30 minutes from an army base. And that army base occasionally does bomb testing on site, and even though we're 30 minutes away from it, we can feel it, we can hear it. I can't even imagine how it must feel for the people who live like really close to the base. When we first moved into this house and I was completely unaware of this, and I felt booming and I felt shaking, I was terrified. I thought I was gonna look outside and see like Godzilla walking around. I don't know what the heck was going on, but it would be nice if there was somewhere I could like look up a schedule and be like aware of when they're gonna be doing it, but it's quite loud. That last one kind of shook my office a bit. We made it to the 7th and final day. I had several things that I could have made this day. For breakfast, I decided to just have the rest of my potato pancakes because, again, I like to try to use up anything that I have before I focus on making anything new. I could have also had the fried bologna sandwich. I could have had eggs and hot dogs. There were so many things that I could have had on this day, but again, in the mindset of using up what I have first. So I already know that this is not going to be as good as it was the day that I made it, but that's okay. It's still going to be a solid breakfast. Yeah, I accidentally kind of blackened a couple of these when I originally made it. Second day of our potato pancakes. These are still very good. They're not as crispy as they were. I should have probably waited to make a fresh batch this morning and just saved the dough, but it's okay. It was still quick, it was easy. I like having things like ready to go sometimes. Even if I know it's not gonna taste as good, it's still easier than trying to cook from scratch every single meal. For lunch, I decided to try my hands at a new dish I had never tried before. This is called taku taku and is a Peruvian dish. Now, of course, I don't have authentic Peruvian ingredients to make this, so I'm just using my leftover refried beans and some cooked rice. You mix those together to make somewhat of a paste, and then what makes a taku taku is it's kind of deep fried into a patty, but the way of making it really reminds me of those Japanese omelets called omuraisu. where you kind of shimmy the omelet down to the end of the pan and you try to flip it just a little bit at a time so it forms almost like a football shaped patty. This was my first time making it, so I was just kind of enjoying the process of trying to get the flip motion and the shape of it right, and I was really impressed with the way this turned out because I did not anticipate being able to do this correctly. And then in traditional fashion, this is served with a fried egg on top. I think that one of the fun parts about these videos is how kind of informal they are, and it kind of offers me an opportunity to give you a little bit of insight into who I am or my background. I have actually done a fair share of Peruvian cooking in my lifetime. My brother-in-law, married to my sister, he's a direct Peruvian. He immigrated to the US from Peru about 18 years ago because my nephew's 18 years old. His mother also immigrated here. My brother-in-law is like in his 50s, I think. I have learned Peruvian cooking through the two of them. A couple of dishes that I can cook are lomo saltado and pasado huancaína when I can find the ají amarillo pepper, which is a standard Peruvian yellow pepper, and that would typically be in this taku taku dish. This is one I've never heard of before. This is one I had never tried before. I was really just looking up different uses for beans and rice, and I stumbled across Peruvian taku taku. Instantly was like, well, it's got Peruvian in the name, I'm sold. So let's dig into our taku taku. This is just beans and rice, but it's kind of deep fried into a patty, as you can see. I was so excited when I was able to kind of flip it into the patty. It kind of reminds me of how they make a Japanese omuraisu omelet. One thing that's very interesting to me is how much overlap there can be between foods in different cultures, because the shape and the structure of this is identical to how that Japanese omelet is made, except for this is a Peruvian bean and rice version. Oh, the crunch of that is lovely. I've mentioned this several times over the course of my channel. I'm not the biggest fan of beans and rice. This is my new favorite way to eat beans and rice. It almost feels like I'm eating junk food in a sense. It's like I'm eating French fries or something like that because of how crispy and fried it is. But I really just want to eat all the little crispy edges. They're so good. We are on to the final dinner. I wanted to check and see how much flour I had left at this point, and I had about a cup and some change. I was thinking that I was going to try a viral recipe that I saw on TikTok for some pasta, but the thing that made it kind of viral was that you don't have to roll out or cut the pasta, you kind of cut it with scissors. I also decided to try the traditional method of making pasta, not the one that I shared earlier in the week, which was just flour, water, and salt, but the version that involved adding an egg. So I did 1 cup of flour and 1 egg, and this was a little on the dry side, so I did have to add some water to it, but then I added a little bit too much water to it, and then I had to add some flour to it. I'm just lucky I had a little extra flour to incorporate into the pasta until the dough came together. I definitely don't mind using these videos as an opportunity to try new things, and I figured that this little scissor pasta method would be a good one to try. So what you do is you just take scissors and you cut the pasta directly into a pot of boiling water. I had a couple of difficulties with this. I should have went back and rewatched how they did it because I cut mine into a little bit bigger chunks than I feel like I should have. And also it was getting kind of hard with the steam from the hot water hitting my hand and hitting the pasta, and then the water was kind of splashing up. So I feel like it's a good idea in theory. It didn't really work that well for me, at least in this application. I have tried it since then where I did it over kind of not really boiling water, but medium heat water, and that worked a little bit better. And I took my time in cutting the pasta, so I was able to get much smaller pieces. But yeah, the way that I'm doing it here, I'm definitely cutting it in too big of chunks. You're supposed to be very small and very delicate little pieces. For the pasta sauce, I kept it really simple, just a couple of tablespoons of margarine, some garlic and herb seasoning, a little bit of black pepper, and then once my pasta was done cooking, I did add some of the pasta cooking water into that. I let that kind of thicken up and cook down, and that was my dinner. So this is day 7 dinner. Homemade pasta with a garlic butter sauce, and let's try it. See how good our homemade pasta turned out. It's a little on the thick side. It's not quite as delicate as I would have liked. Here's a nice thin piece. I'm gonna try a thinner piece. This is how it's supposed to look, but the steam made it really hard to cut it. These thinner pieces are much better. Like I said, I saw that online. I wanted to give it a shot. The steam just made it hard to cut the noodles directly into the pot. But the nice thin pieces are really lovely. I might have slightly overcooked it. It's not bad at all. I think the shape is really cute. I think it's a really good idea. Just the execution could be tweaked ever so slightly. I can definitely see why people like homemade pasta versus store-bought pasta, because it does taste a little bit richer. Maybe that's a placebo effect, but it also could be because of the addition of the egg. I would definitely try making this again, but I also really think that this could benefit from some Parmesan cheese. Just keep that in mind if you are trying to follow this along. I would probably put some Parmesan cheese on it if you have it. I really enjoyed this $21 series, namely because it was really about taking a very small amount of ingredients and seeing how many creative meals I could make with them, and I think I made a good bit. I also learned a lot this week. I made gnocchi for the first time, I made flour tortillas for the first time, and I made a couple of different types of pasta for the first time. And overall, it was a really great learning experience, and I definitely feel like a lot of the things that I shared in this video I will be able to adapt to future meal plans to make them even more affordable. I think though that the most exciting part about this week is how much food I have left over after eating 3 meals a day for 7 days. Most notably, I have almost half of this box remaining of potato flakes, so this is something I would not need to repurchase again next week, along with well over half of a bag of rice. That's another item I wouldn't need to repurchase. And this chicken bouillon powder is almost full. These 3 ingredients alone would be able to roll over into next week and give me an extra $8 or so to spend so that I could get more variety in the meals next week. I also still have a very small amount of margarine left over. I always manage to make it through a good bit of this every time I buy it. I have 2 lonesome little eggs. I did a really great job of rationing the eggs. The way that I kind of thought about it was I was allowed to have 1 egg every morning for breakfast, and I pretty much stuck with that for the most part during the week, and then that gave me an extra 5 to 6 eggs to use for other things throughout the week. The bologna, I have 1 slice left. This did come with 7 slices in it, so I could have had a fried bologna breakfast sandwich every morning for the whole 7 days. Loaf of bread, the bologna, and the eggs would probably cost around $6 to $7. That's a really cheap breakfast that will last you the entire week. Hot dogs, I still have 4 left. And I made it about halfway through this half gallon of milk, so quarter gallon or so. I want to say this is about 2/3 of the bag of mixed vegetables, so I could have added more vegetables throughout the week if I had wanted to, but we will talk about that here in a second. As far as ingredients, I used up entirely. I used all of the flour, all of the beans, and all of the potato chips. So that's where we get into the review portion of this week. As far as the ingredients that I felt like were the most practical and the most versatile, all-purpose flour. Definitely number 1. The bologna, the eggs, and the bread. Again, cheap and easy breakfast that I could have eaten the entire week. The potatoes were an extremely versatile purchase, absolutely, along with the margarine and the milk, because that allowed me to make all of these things well without having to sacrifice on flavor. Same thing with the chicken bouillon. I kind of struggled to find ways to use the hot dogs, but that's okay. I used 4 of them this week, and then I could roll over the other 4 into the second week. I probably could have done this without the beans and rice. I know I did get a couple of comments about how this would be impossible without the beans and rice, but I actually barely put a dent in the rice, and I did use all the beans, but I only used all the beans because I felt like I had to. Throughout the week, I tried to come up with different ways to use the beans, but personally speaking, I could have done this entire week without the beans and rice and been fine. As you can see, I have plenty of other ingredients, and I could have used that like $2 and some change that I used to buy the beans and rice to buy something like a block of cheese or even another meat or vegetable option. The fact that I got 2 bags of mixed vegetables is probably my biggest regret of this week. It's really challenging because Dollar General doesn't sell a whole lot in the way of frozen vegetables. They have mixed vegetables, peas, green beans, and broccoli cuts. Not broccoli florets, but broccoli cuts. The florets are more expensive. They're like $2.50 a bag. Ideally, I probably should have gotten broccoli cuts in place of the second bag of mixed vegetables. The first bag that I sorted was a really good choice, but I didn't really know what to do with the green beans. I had really good uses for the corn and the peas and the carrots. If I had gotten a bag of broccoli cuts, then I could have used those in my breakfast along with some eggs. I love eggs and broccoli. I could have made like a broccoli potato soup with my potatoes. I'm sure I could have come up with some uses, and it would have given me a little bit more versatility than trying to figure out ways to integrate mixed vegetables. I feel like I would have put this bag to better use if I had taken the time to sort it like I did with the first bag. So I do think if I were to repeat this process again, if I were to get 2 bags of mixed vegetables, I would sort them both. Otherwise, I would do 1 bag of mixed vegetables and 1 bag of broccoli. Overall though, I feel like this week went really well. And there's a part of me that really wants to continue it onto a second week. It's always such a hard balance between trying to put out really fun and entertaining and lighthearted content and then putting out practical and useful content. And then there's also a balance between how much time I dedicate to any one particular store. I'm very prideful of the content that I put out, and so it's kind of hard for me to dedicate a lot of my time to one particular thing, but I feel like I did this week justice. And even more so, all of these ingredients that I have left over, which is a good bit of food, would roll over into the next week and allow you to make more fluid choices next week, because this frees up a pretty significant amount of the budget and you would still have a lot of really great meals. I could have continued this for 8 days. I probably could have even continued it for 9 days on $21. So there's definitely no rush to get to the grocery store immediately after. For example, if I were to continue this for the 8th day, I would do the fried bologna breakfast sandwich. I could make another batch of the hot dog fried rice. I could probably even make another batch of that gnocchi, the potato dumpling soup that I made on the first day. There was a lot of versatility in the ingredients that I chose, and that's why I'm really happy with how this week turned out. So the final part of this episode is going to be a complete 7-day recap, everything I cooked and everything I ate for the past 7 days on $21 from Dollar General. Enjoy. Day 1 was a Saturday, and it was also my grocery shopping day, so unfortunately I did not eat breakfast on this day because breakfast was spent at the store doing my shopping. When I got home from the store, I had a bologna sandwich, and then at dinner time I made the creamy gnocchi soup with corn. Day 2, I had a fried bologna breakfast sandwich, and then for lunch I had some leftover gnocchi soup, and for dinner I made the bean stuffed pupusas. Day 3, I made a version of huevos rancheros. I finished off the last of my gnocchi soup, and for dinner I made a hot dog fried rice. Day 4, I had another fried bologna breakfast sandwich. I finished off the last of my hot dog fried rice, and I made pierogi for dinner. Day 5, I had beans with hot dogs, a fried egg, and some buttered toast for breakfast. For lunch I had a bologna sandwich, and for dinner I made a vegetable noodle soup. Day 6, I had potato pancakes topped with country gravy. For lunch I had hot dogs with beans and rice, and for dinner I made bean chimichangas. And on the 7th day, I had the rest of my potato pancakes with the rest of my country gravy. For lunch, I made Peruvian-style taku taku topped with a fried egg. And for dinner, I made homemade pasta with a garlic butter sauce. I hope you guys enjoyed this series as much as I did. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you again soon.